Got it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Courtney. I am the president of Trikel Art Supplies, and we are joined today by Trikel Pro Team artist Kai Lung Q. And we are going to have him demo a pet portrait for us today. Kai is the judge for this year's pet portrait competition. So we thought it'd be kind of fun to have him host a webinar that shows how he does his pet portrait painting. So if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to those when we have a moment. And then at the end of the demo, we will go ahead and take more questions from you guys. Kai, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for coming. Wow. We are like, there's so many people joining in, still joining in. That's crazy. But yeah, I guess we could just get started. It is 1 hour demo, but so we're gonna try making it within that time limit, but if we do go a little over, as long as you guys don't mind, I don't mind, and I'm always down for questions as well. So feel free to write any questions you have, and I'll try to answer everyone's. So yeah, for today, since there is a pet portrait demonstration, I don't have the traditional pet. I don't have a cat or a dog. I have guinea pigs. So I figure I paint one of my guinea pigs. That's Coco right there. So I thought that was like a pretty fun image to paint, and there's like some nice light effects happening right there as well, which it's also cool because that's kind of like what I'm also going to be talking about during my Vision Next demonstration as well, which is like creating light effects. So I figure we can kind of cram two things in here at once today and just see where we get off from. Right. So, all right, over here, I'm going to be starting out with my Trikel Opal Long Flat. It's like number 10. I really like starting really big at the beginning. And over here, I have my, good. Okay, cool. Over here, I have my palette. So just a really quick recap on just my colors, just so everyone kind of knows what I'm mixing. I'm using titanium white, cad yellow light, cad yellow medium, cad orange, cad red, Alizarin permanent, transparent oxide, ultramarine blue, Viridian, and ivory black. So, and over here is my solvent-free gel from Gamblin. And the surface I'm using is Trikel, the birchwood oil ground panel. I believe I'm using a 9x12, or is it an 8x10? Actually, I think it's an 8x10. I think I'm using 8x10 today. But yeah, really like these panels, really versatile. Does exactly what I want them to do, but let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just kind of tone my canvas or tone the panel. So I'm mixing my ivory black with transparent oxide with a little bit of alizarin permanent because I want to set a bit of a warmer, darker ground. And maybe I'll offset that a little bit with Viridian. And then I'm going to dip it into my Gamsol that I have over here. And what I'm going to first do is I'm just going to kind of go in, and usually whenever I'm starting a painting, I never start a painting thinking of it like, okay, well, I'm painting, in this case, a guinea pig, right? I'm trying not to let myself think about it like that. Instead, I want to think of it like, okay, I am creating a painting, and it's just an assortment of abstract shapes. And it just so happens that, the primary shapes that's within the central, composition is, just so happens to look and reflect the illusion of a guinea pig. But I'm not really trying to think about it like, oh, well, that's a guinea pig. And, how do I paint that guinea pig into this? I usually want to go in very abstract. And, honestly, just thinking more like an abstract painter than anything. Because remember, at the end of the day, I don't want a painting that just looks like a generic portrait of a subject. I want a painting that, even if you don't care for the subject, hopefully it will still look like an interesting looking painting. And that's something that I really care about a lot. So right now I've established a bit of a ground here. I'm slowly squinting down and I'm just kind of seeing, okay, where can I kind of put like some of the lights? And I'm seeing, okay, cool. So I'm probably thinking of, that's probably gonna go somewhere here. and dark's gonna be somewhere there. So I see there's like maybe 3 values that's being separated. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of go in for a bit of a dark. Okay. And even for that dark, I don't want it to go too dark. It's dark enough to read as the darkest value of the entirety of form. Okay. And right now what I'm doing is trying to see, okay, how do I kind of want him to situate himself within here? I'm really liking those blues that I see. So I'm going to mix a bit of my white with my ultramarine blue, maybe take a little bit of cat yellow light, a little bit more. And right now I'm just using straight paint. And I'm just kind of applying it like so. Over here, I'm going to take a little bit of the blue that I added here is my King's blue, actually, which is just a lighter blue. And I'm just using it as a bit of a shortcut, right? You don't really need it, but for the sake of demonstration, I am going to use some of these colors to help create some sense of shortcuts. Okay. And feel free to let me know if you guys have any questions. So if anyone is asking anything, feel free to just, you can let me know in the comment section, or I think somebody will let me know about it. Okay, so right now what I'm doing is okay, I cleared out the darks, I cleared out like that coolish mid-tone. So now I'm gonna go in for a bit of that warm. So I'm mixing my cat orange with my white. And then maybe I'm mixing a bit of blues right here. It's really important for you to just take your time when it comes to mixing colors. I know it's really tempting to rush, right? Because you just want to, start painting, but it actually would do you more harm than good if you were to rush. Just because when you're rushing and we're not truly just getting the color that you're trying to aim for, you're going to have to end up going back and fixing it anyways, right? So I always say it's always better to spend that extra like 10, 15 seconds to, if you realize the color is off, to go back and readjust the color, as opposed to just putting it on there and then later spending 5-6 minutes readjusting and remixing something completely new. I'd say that's always it's about working smart, not working hard, right?
We have a question, and they want to know what colors you used for the underpainting.
Oh, the underpaintings. Yeah, so the underpainting is such an assortment of my dark colors that I neutralized with my Gamsol. So I believe I used transparent oxide, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of Viridian. I believe that's what I used for that. Yeah. But honestly, like the underpainting or the underground, it really doesn't matter too much. I'd say just use whatever you're feeling like, or you feel like the image is like kind of telling you, or is giving you like a sense of impression, right? Because every time we're looking at a particular subject, I usually want to try to look at the entire, I guess, composition and just seeing what kind of color is this, vibing with, like what kind of color am I vibing from this particular subject? And I usually just kind of go with my gut instinct on that. Because at the end, it doesn't really matter anyways, just because you're gonna have to end up going in and painting on top of that. So it doesn't really matter. And I think the key thing here is, at least when it comes to colors too. So right now I'm just kind of stacking colors on top of each other. I'm not really worried too much about say trying to get, like, as you can see over here and over here, there's like some things of like a higher value. I'm actually trying to like keep that neutralized for right now. Right now it's mainly just kind of getting the values in somewhat the right location and right place. But in terms of color, I'm still keeping those neutralized so that I can go back and put more on later, right? Because I feel like with painting, a lot of people forget that when you're painting, you have both value and color that you can manipulate. You know, a lot of times whenever people are painting, they forget that and they're only manipulating, where they only catch themselves manipulating value, and they forget color, or sometimes they like, you know, put color and value together. And what that usually does is, you know, that will result in you only being able to utilize half of your arsenal, right? And I think, you know, as artists, you know, we should be able to not only use everything that's, you know, in our toolbox, but also understand what is in our toolbox. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in and kind of pushing out some of the form here. And I'm gonna actually scoot backwards a little. Okay, there. So I'm scooting backwards. This is gonna give me a much better look on the overall shape of what I'm seeing here. So I'm going over here and mixing, and I do see a bit of a warmer brown right over here. I'm going to show you guys exactly where in a bit. But see, a bit of a warmer brown. Let's see. So right now this is how I measure. I'm going to tell you guys how I measure now. So right now I'm looking at that dark shape right there. I'm like, okay, cool, that's a dark shape. And I'm using my eyes to kind of measure. But this is how you can use your eyes to measure while still maintaining calm and collected. So I see there's a dark shape right there. And after that, I see there is a light blue shape right here. I see that. And then I see there is another neutral yellow shape right here. Okay, and then with, you know, that being here. And then finally, that gray is going to be somewhere here. Cool. So hopefully you guys were able to kind of see how I was able to, you know, get that. But that's kind of how I measure.
Oh, sorry. We have another question for water miscible oils. What would you recommend for a solvent?
Water mixable oils, I don't really use those. I mean, for water mixable oils, I mean, the point of using them is so you can use water, right? So I assume it's water. But I personally would, you know, if you're asking about what solvents to use, you know, just go with normal oil. And if you want to do normal oil, I usually use Gamsol from Gamblin. You know, in my opinion, I think it's like one of the safest solvents out there, you know. So yeah, that's what I would use. Yeah. But yeah. So right now I'm just kind of going in and just clocking in some of that light values right there. As for anything here, what I usually want to think about is just red, yellow, and blue. I'm going to admit to everyone here that I myself have never personally studied color theory, even basic color theory. I've never really, like, you know, kind of glossed over. The only thing I do understand or know is everything is comprised of red, yellow, and blue. Those are the primary colors, right? At least majority of colors is comprised of red, yellow, and blue. So that's actually kind of what I usually like to think about when I'm painting is every time when I'm painting, I will first, of course, take a look at the, you know, well, when I first mix colors, right? So I'm going to give you guys the key to how I mix colors here. The first thing I would say is, you know, I would look and I would ask, okay, like, what's the local color? Like, what is the color that I first read, right? You know, and there could be anything. And it doesn't have to be one color or one answer for everyone. Everyone sees things differently. You know, like if I were to look at like this wooden block, I might see yellow, but someone else might see orange. That's totally fine. You know, everyone perceives color differently, and that's totally fine. So that's, you know, your local color, the first initial local color, that's uniquely your own. Okay, it's whatever your visual experience is. And then after that, I just ask myself, okay, what is the value? You know, and if you really want to get it technical, like you can, you know, put the value on a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 being pure white, 10 being pure black. What number does it fall on the scale? You know, and finally, you know, you adjust it accordingly. And then finally, after that, you just ask yourself, okay, is it leaning more towards red, yellow, or blue, right? And then you just compare and mix in relationship in accordance to, you know, the base that you already laid down, which is the value in the local color, right? So no matter what you do now to that color, even if you adjust it like bluish, reddish, yellowish, it's not going to run away from the local color or values, but you can start adjusting it accordingly. And a key of what I like doing when it comes to at least, even creating the sense of like, lights or darks is every time I shift or every time I go into another, or every time I add another layer of value, whether it be higher or lower, whether it be lighter or darker, I have the local colors stay the same if it's like, within the same vicinity, but I just switch it up in terms of red, yellow, and blue. So I'll show you guys a little bit more about that like later when I go for the lights, but that's just kind of a, basic gist on how I approach colors. Yeah. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in and going for some of the darks here. Now we were just giving him giving him his like yearly bath. We bathe him like once a year, and we just did that like we did that like yesterday. So he had the same exact face like yesterday. So I'm just thinking about that. So right now I'm just kind of going in and continuing to just kind of mix a color that I'm satisfied with. So right now I'm trying to aim for this, and I see that it's a bit more of a slightly lighter purple with some blues. That's kind of like what I mean. You really want to like take your time mixing. If you guys really do a playback on this video, you'll notice that I'm mixing a lot more than I'm actually like, putting colors down. And every time I do put a color down, it's usually just like one stroke, And that's just something I really want you guys to be aware of. Because it's not about what you do here, it's about what you do here and what you do here, Try to think of, well, at least for me, I like to try thinking about painting as more of a chess game in a way, right? Like in a chess game, it's not about how cool someone can put down the chess piece on the board, right? It's all about what they're thinking about, strategizing, and you can't really see that until they put down the move. But the move is a direct result of what's happening here, So when you're painting, your mind should be constantly moving. It should constantly be in a state of motion where you're plotting out the next move and just asking yourself, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And right now I'm actually going to place a bit of creative freedom over here, get some like darker shapes right over here. Yeah. Okay, and now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in. And let's see, I'm just kind of squinting down right here. I'm noticing, okay, cool, there's like a dark right here. And after that, I can have a dark kind of go in and squeeze the form out here. You guys notice that I'm really just trying my best to kind of paint in a way where I'm not only just painting the subject, but I'm also trying to utilize background and subject, foreground and background all together to create, for unification. So it's like one can't do without the other, essentially. And, I like it when I can see paintings just, being a whole as opposed to a separation of sorts. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to establish, I guess, a anchor point or something that I can call a focal point, which is, of course, the light that's glowing within the face here. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in, mixing some slightly darker values, mainly alizarin permanent with transparent red oxide with a little bit of blue. I'm trying to keep my color mixtures very simple as well. I'm not, trying to mix a bunch of different crazy colors, But right now I'm just kind of going in, and over here, I'm probably gonna actually go in for a bit of a gray actually. Perhaps a little bit of a blue right there, but I don't actually want this side of the background to be too prominent. So I'm probably just gonna have a bit of gray right here. That way it reflects off of the color there as well. And next, what I'm going to do is just kind of going in, and I think at this step, I can actually go in and switch my brush now. So I'm going to switch my brush for a number 6 Opal Trickel long flag. Because at this stage, I've already established more or less just like the general idea of where all the overall dark shapes are, or overall dark and light shapes and gray shapes are. So now it's like when I can actually go in and start painting finally, because so far I've just been laying down the groundworks. Okay. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We are at, you're only 20 minutes in, so you're good.
20 minutes in? Perfect.
Yeah. And then we have a question while I got you. Someone is asking what the gel is on your palette.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this is solvent-free gel from Gamblin. Yeah. It was actually the artist Ryan S. Brown that got me into it, although he wasn't using solvent-free gel, but he was using Rublev's oleo gel. But because like, you know, he was using that, I realized, oh, there are gel forms like of solvents, because before then I wasn't even using any solvents. I was just purely using Gamsol. I didn't understand what solvents are, right? Like I said, I'm like mainly self-taught, so I didn't really have any instructor to like really tell me what all these crazy, like, you know, chemical or all these crazy solvents are called, or their uses, you know. So it's just basically, you know, pathway discovering. But yeah, after that, I discovered this, and it's like so easy. You just, you know, squeeze it on, and it doesn't smell, and doesn't dry weirdly. So, you know, to me, it was like a win-win in my book to start using it. So right now I'm actually going in and establishing a lighter, much lighter value here. Notice I'm not reaching in for my whites, at least for right now, because I really want to utilize the idea of chroma and letting chroma act as a bit of a white. And I'm very much still going off of the idea of brush economy as well. Brush economy basically means, you know, every stroke that you're putting down, you know, it should have some kind of meaning. It should have some kind of purpose, right? You don't want to be putting down brush strokes that, you know, even if they're not there, you're not going to miss them. You want every stroke that you put down, you know, to carry some kind of weight. And that's why I usually tell people, I've been repeating this analogy that I give my students. It's super weird sounding, but you know, it is kind of true. So, you know, I'll tell you guys right now. So if you guys want to use it, you know, if you're teaching, then you can use it with your students. If not, then, you know, it's fine. But yeah, like the analogy that I like using recently is I like to think of my painting as like a company, and I am the CEO of that company. And every brushstroke that I put down is an employee that I'm placing within the context of this company. And the color mixing process is the interview process. See what I'm saying? So it's like if you rush the interview process, what's going to happen? You might not hire the exact right fit. And if you skimp out on actually measuring and seeing where that value or where, you know, that employee can go, you might place them in the wrong department where they're not suited for, you know. And just like in a company, there is no job that is less, right? Whether it be, you know, whether you're like in some higher ranking, whether you're in some low ranking, whether you're like, you know, custodian, whether you're in charge of like catering, right? Everyone has their job that needs, and they're required to be there in order for this whole thing to function, right? So you want to treat everyone equally. You want to treat all brushstrokes equally. So yeah, that's like a little analogy I like making. So you want to be a good boss, right? You don't want to, like, you know, randomly start sticking random stuff everywhere. So for instance, like I have like one dark right here, and I'm just going to kind of stick right up there. Let's see. All right, so right now what I'm going to do is now we're going back into the idea of that light, right? So I want to put some other value over here, and we're going to go back into thinking of what I was just talking about, which is red, yellow, and blue. See, so right here I have a light, you know, that, and I see like the local color there is of course still going to be a yellow, right? So I'm going to just have that yellow just ready, set and go. You know, maybe like a, yeah, like a warmer yellow. But one thing that I realized here, is there's already a bit of a yellow right here. So I have two choices. Then I can either make it a little bit more red as I increase the value, or I can go even more the opposite. So maybe I'll actually introduce a bit of a blue right here. So I'm gonna add a little bit of blue, add a little bit of yellow, the cool kind of yellow. And then I'm gonna add lights. Okay, maybe a little bit more. That kind of yellow. Mix a little bit more. Like I said, take your time with mixing, you know. Finally, I'm gonna like just gonna place that value in here. Boom. Okay, so now I have a bit of a greenish yellow right here. And I can use that as basically the base. So now that I have this base, okay, cool. So green is what? Blue and yellow, right? So now I can kind of go back in maybe to even orange yellow, because that's like red and yellow. Kind of have that go in a little lighter. And then finally, I can go in with just a yellow, a yellow. So like yellow and white. And you know what? I can even do two sets of yellow. So I can have, maybe I'll first mix my white with my cad yellow medium. Oops, a little bit of blue got in there. Got to be careful with color contaminations like that. I'm going to select another place to do that in. Bit of a yellow right here. A little bit more. Okay. Oh, does anyone have any questions so far? Feel free to let me know. A little bit like that. And then finally, going in for a bit of a lighter value. And then over here, I'm actually going to go in and introduce a bit of a warm right down here. A little bit of a light. There. And just remember, you want to think through each of your strokes, right? All right. Cool. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to start getting some of like that really cool looking fur pattern that I see. And even then, I'm still thinking about it in terms of shapes. I'm actually closing one eye right now and very much just kind of going in and establishing the shapes, relating them to one another. Looking at that shape, we're noticing, okay, cool. There's like a bit of a reddish shape that's going down like so. And then of course they're noticing that there is a bit of a warmer light. It's kind of going upwards.
We have a question from Cynthia. She wants to know if you always paint alla prima.
Yes. Yeah, I mainly paint alla prima. I mean, there are times where I would like do indirect paintings sometimes, but for me, I just feel like alla prima is, in my opinion, the most truthful way of depicting reality. We're painting what we see, because whenever we're looking and whenever we are painting, or whenever we're just experiencing things in reality, we're, you know, it's always not like something where we stop and look at something for like hours and hours and hours. It's something that's very brief. It's something that's very, you know, that's very sudden. And you know, when you have something like that, you don't necessarily focus on any of the details per se, right? Even if you're talking to somebody, talking to a friend, or talking to someone that you know, you're not really paying attention to like every little single pores on their face, right? You're just looking at them, and next time you're talking to someone, just really try to keep focus on like, okay, what are you actually seeing when you're looking at them? It's just shapes of colors, right? that we compartmentalize in our head and just say, oh, well, that's a person. Next time you look at a tree, you don't see all the single little leaves, right? It's shapes. We don't need too much information to depict, or to let people know what it is we're seeing. So that to me is like why I really like alla prima, is because to me it's like that's why every time I look at a Sargent painting or a Zorn painting, especially like some of their plein air paintings, I can get a very truthful sense of what they were truly experiencing. There's just something about that you can't really experience from a studio painting, because a studio painting, it's like, you can like make it super beautiful, but then it loses, like, at least in my opinion, it loses the sense of the urgency, that sense of like immediacy that comes from just like painting something just right there. And yeah, so even when I am painting from photos, I still try to think about painting it. I still try to treat it as if I am painting it from life. Like, I'm not getting too caught up with the the glorious handicaps or the glorious ups that photos can provide me, which is showing me everything. But sometimes I want to actually take a step back and ask myself, okay, well, what do I truly see if I were to look at this with my own two eyes? And I try to still paint what I feel like I would actually see. So yeah, that's kind of like how I like approaching these kind of things. Hopefully that answered your questions, but I kind of elaborated more on that question, but yeah. Let's see. But yeah, if anyone is, interested within that context, then, of course, check out Richard Schmidt's Alla Prima book. Like, that book is honestly, even though I didn't really have a teacher, that book is my teacher, right? And even all the mentors that I had later on in my life, people who, kind of took me in, gave me some advice, and, I was able to take a few of their workshops, like, Daniel Keyes, Michelle Dunaway, Tim Reese, just shouting a few names out there. All those people are associated with Richard Schmidt, so yeah. Alla Prima book, so it's the truth. Okay, so right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in over here, kind of getting some of like this dark out. And I might even kind of go in and go for some of like that slightly lighter blue that's leaning more towards yellow even. So I'm mixing my King's Blue, my Cad Yellow, and my white together. I'm going to mix a little bit of this solvent free gel together, a little bit more blue actually. Not a good color, perhaps a little bit, neutralize it a little bit. Add a little bit more white. Okay, that's a little better. A little bit more blue. You see what I'm saying? Like, you constantly want to like continue to adjust the colors till they are, that's better. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna kind of go in, just set that up. And even here, I can add a little bit of reds in there as well. And then we have blue, red, and yellow once more. Okay. And then of course I'm going to go back in here, get some of that nice warm, kind of going down like so. Boop. All right, let's switch into my paper towels. Always keep a paper towel handy. All right, so let's see, I'm just gonna for that hand, I might not even paint that hand. I might just like abstract it because like it doesn't really matter. At least to me, it doesn't really matter. Because the subject, I still wanted to still be focused within Coco right here. So I'm gonna first start out by mixing a slightly darker value. I'm mixing that by using transparent, my Alizarin Crimson, or Alizarin Permanent, sorry, Ultramarine Blue and Viridian. And emphasizing a little bit more on Alizarin. That way the darks that I will have is gonna be leaning more towards the redder side, like so. Okay. I'm gonna like go in a little bit more. All right, cool. So now I'm gonna go back into some of the light areas. So I'm gonna be mixing a bit of my Cad orange and my Cad yellow medium, perhaps with a little bit of white. Kind of offset it, but essentially it's kind of going in and utilizing some of that light that I see. The lights that I see will hopefully balance everything out as well. At least in terms of like the left side. I'm gonna kind of go back in there right now. And let's see. Okay, well, first of all, actually, we need to first figure this out. Okay, so I realized that there is a light here that I still need to capture. I'm gonna probably capture that first.
We have a question from Alicia. She wants to know if you have any tips on laying paint on top of paint and it not mixing.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys have been seeing me kind of doing that already. My tip for that is brush economy. A lot of people, they have that issue because because think about it like this, right? Like say I have a color right here. Okay, I have a color right here and I want to go in and, just kind of lay this down. And notice what's happening. It's kind of mixing with that, right? Now, let's say if I had another really thick strokes within here, just kind of fix it. Boom. And notice how it's kind of going in undisturbed. And the whole reason behind that is brush economy. Oops, I just bumped it real quick. Oops, let me just turn it back. Brush economy, right? Because when you start licking the canvas, aka meaning like, if you have a color and you just start going like this, that's when it mixes. And it mixes because you're mixing, you're treating this more like a painting, right? That's why I'm saying the thinking and the problem solving should all be happening here. This should be just where you fill in the answers, right? So it's kind of like in a math problem. This is your cheat sheet. This is your like your scratch sheet, your scratch paper. This is your scratch paper. You're not gonna write all your thoughts and processes on like that little space that they give you in a math problem, right? That's the only where the answer goes. You're gonna write everything down in the scratch paper. See what I'm saying? So in order to avoid your colors mixing on the painting, just make sure you're mixing the right colors. And when you actually do mix the right colors, you put it on just once and stop. Make sense? So that is how you can get past that. And if you start doing that, you will notice immediately a huge difference just within your process. Anyways, hopefully that makes sense. See, is there any other questions or anything like that? Anything?
No questions at this time, and we are at 3:41, just so you know.
3:41. Gotcha. Okay, so 20 minutes left. All right, let's see what I can do in 20 minutes. All right, cool. All right, so right now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, cool, there's gonna be like a nice dark right here. I'm just gonna kind of make that a little simpler. And then over here, this little arm right here, I could just kind of like draw that out for right now. There is no rules. Like, do whatever you need to do to make things work, right? I don't know if you guys can hear them in the back. Actually, they're actually running around. Anyways, now what I'm doing is I'm going in and I just kind of want to sort of go in and I guess just lay out some of the values here. Let's see. Then, like I said, for this, I'm probably going to have some kind of like abstraction going on. Oops. See for here too, it's going to be a bit of a dark. So right now, I'm just kind of going in and trying to lay down as much colors as possible, right? Because we are running a little bit out of time. So, you know, even so that means like, you know, if I do lay out everything like so, even if I don't end up finishing, or even if I just have this as like an active sketch, you know, it should still look intentionally like a finished piece. Okay, so right now, kind of going back into the darks. Let's see, once more. Just getting like that nice dark in. Notice how like the dark is being undisturbed because I am once again using just one stroke. Let's see, then I'm going to mix a bit of a gray right here. Yeah. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here, mix a bit of a blue. All right. And of course, now I got to go back in here and create that light value for anything. I want to establish at least all the lights before we wrap this up. That means here, that means here. And let's see. Yeah, something like so. Like so. Okay, so right now, seeing a bit of a slightly darker value there as well. And I'm going to go in once more, bit of a gray, with a bit of a brown right here. That way, I can kind of go back in here and cover that area up with a dark.
Somebody wants to know if you would use the same palette if you were painting another animal like a dog.
The same palette, you mean the colors? Yeah, I would be using the exact same colors and same palette. Because like I said, the palette that I'm using is universal. I use the same palette to paint pets, to paint portraits, to paint landscapes, to paint, you know, superheroes, pop culture characters, droids, robots, you know, all that stuff. You can use this universal palette to paint anything, right? And, you know, when it comes down to, you know, subject matter, say for instance, like this is a guinea pig, you know, you're asking about a dog. I actually, you know, try to avoid thinking about things like that, where I'm like, oh, well, you know, a dog, guinea pig, cat, you know, they're like different subjects. Yes, for sure. But, you know, are they really different subjects in terms of if you were to just break them down into color and value matters, right? They're just comprised of just abstract shapes of value and color, just arranged in slightly different ways. But, you know, in terms of like everything else, it's very similar, you know, because at the end of the day, like I said, we're not painting, like this is not going to spring out a life coming out towards me. This is still at the end of the day, just an abstract painting, abstract shapes. So subject shouldn't really matter. This kind of way of painting, you can apply it to anything. That's actually one of the reasons why I was about to actually just do a dog painting, but that's the reason why I wanted to do a guinea pig painting, because not everyone has guinea pigs. So then, you know, that way I can kind of show you guys a bit more of a universal way of approaching this. That way, if I did a dog, then, people who have dogs will be like, oh, cool, now I know how to paint my dog. But then people who have cats are like, oh, I don't know how to paint a cat. But I'm painting a guinea pig now. And a lot of people don't have guinea pigs. So then hopefully you could just take the techniques that I'm doing here and apply it to what it is you're doing, instead of thinking too much in terms of subject matter, right? Yeah. And it's something that I tell my students too. Like I always say to them, like, I don't want you guys, I'm never going to teach you guys how to, do things like, oh, well, this is how you draw a face. This is how you paint a still life. This is how you paint a tree. I never teach like that. What I usually want to teach, or what I usually teach like is, I'll just teach you how to break things down. So then at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's a face, it's a pet, it's an alpaca, it's freaking Baby Yoda, like, you can paint it, like, no problem. Like, you should never let subject matter deter you away from painting. Yeah.
All right, we have 2 more questions.
Go ahead.
Are you in the middle of getting ready to explain something? Or are you ready for the questions?
No, I'm good.
All right. I like this one. When judging a contest, what is one thing that you really dislike seeing and one thing you just love to see?
So I guess one thing that I mean, I don't really, the only thing I dislike seeing is, like, I guess plagiarism, like that's the only thing I dislike seeing. It's like, if you're copying another person's painting and passing it off as your own, that's the only thing I don't like seeing. Everything else is fair game, I feel like, because, like, I feel like art is self-expression. You can express yourself however you like to do that. And it's like, for me too, when I'm teaching painting, I'm not teaching art. Like, this is not art that I'm teaching you guys. This is purely just my form of, it's just painting, right? And if you want to take art from it, it's my form of self-expression. But I feel like, for me, I like, what I really like seeing is when people are really just kind of being fearless with what they're doing. I can sense that. When I can sense that, that's what I like seeing, right? When I can sense that, they're really just honing and owning what they're doing, and, being very apologetic with it. Like, that's something I really like seeing. It's not a particular style. It's not a particular, like, aesthetic. I don't care about any of that, because I feel like there is, like, valuable aesthetics no matter what your style is, like, I'm open to any interpretation in style, right? I know for the past almost hour, I was talking about the fact that I like alla prima. Do not think of that like, oh, well, if you're going to enter the contest, I better paint alla prima. No, like, don't do that. Like, I want you to paint what you feel best expresses yourself in, and best expresses your techniques and your abilities within, right? So I'm never going to let my love for like, a specific painting style to dictate how I judge a competition. I usually want to see something that's just truthful to you. And yeah, and of course, having, like, semi-accurate drawings, or at least, like, not having the form being too off. That's also another thing, right? But yeah, that's something I want to, hopefully that answers your question. But
all right, and then the next question, do you generally start with your darks and get lighter, or do you start with midtones and get darker and lighter?
That's a good question. I do both. I really do both. I did darks this time just because I feel like there's a lot of darks dominating. So I feel like it just makes a lot more sense for me to start dark a little bit more. So it really just depends on the situation. Every situation is different. Every subject is different. So I tend to want, like, I tend to, like, try to approach paintings in a way where I'm not relying on past formulas, or, because I noticed, I realize many of us, probably all of us, have done that before, where it's like, when we're painting a specific subject, and if it's a subject that we painted before, we're like, oh, well, what I did that time works, so I'm going to reapply it to this time. That, that could work, right? But at the same time, if you do that, you're not really growing in a way, because you are just, rehashing, past skills, right? So it's like, every time I approach a painting, I always want to try to treat it as if it's the first time I'm painting, not just painting a subject, but just painting in general. It's like my first time painting, my first time tackling this thing that we call painting. That's something I like to think about, and I like to like have myself think about. And I feel like whenever we do that and we just get comfortable with the idea of, starting anew, starting fresh, and not relying on, old techniques and old formulas, we really not only open ourselves up to new possibilities, but it really takes the stress away too, right? Especially once we like, make that our home, make that into something that we're like, okay, this is where I'm comfortable at. Being uncomfortable is my comfort. I feel like that's something that, if you really hone that, there's no stopping you, right? You're the like really like, the sky will just be the limit for you then in terms of just your growth. So that's something I still try to do myself too. Sometimes I don't, and still, because like I said, it is hard, right? If this thing's easy, then I'd probably be out of the job right now because so it is a lifetime kind of process. But as long as like mentally you're understanding what needs to be fulfilled, or what need, as long as you mentally kind of are understanding what you want to think about, you're already at a good place. The danger is if your mind's just blank and you're just like painting but you're not really thinking, and it's like, that time, I mean, that's still good if you're doing it for fun, but if you want to like really improve and grow, your mind mentally, you have to be working 90% of the time, and only 10% of the time should you actually be physically painting, if that makes sense. Yeah. How are we doing on time, by the way, right now?
We have 7 minutes left, but if you want to keep going,
Ooh,
go for
7
it.
minutes.
We're
Okay.
getting the questions are coming in now.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
yeah. Go ahead.
do you ever paint upside down?
I do, sometimes. I try not to let it make it a habit. I do let my students do that at the beginning, especially if they have trouble look, because like, why do we paint upside down? A lot of people, they do that, but I find that a lot of them don't really understand why. They just understand that, it helps them look and see things on a new perspective. But the core of why we do that, the core of why we paint upside down, is completely just to like reinforce what I've been saying, which is looking at things as abstract shapes. By looking at things upside down, we disassociate the subject away from our mind mentally. We disassociate the subject. So when we do that, it becomes easier for us to like recognize the shapes, and that's the reason why people like painting or drawing upside down. So there's no harm in doing that, especially if you find yourself having trouble still recognizing abstract shapes. By all means, do whatever you need to do to help you kind of start processing, things in that manner. But I would not do it all the time. I would try to kind of let go of that, especially later on, because especially when you're painting from life, you can't flip the model upside down to check. You know what I mean? So it's better for us to have it in our abilities to be able to just kind of break shapes down without having the need to like manipulate whatever it is that we're painting. But like I said, like if you're starting out, or if you always find trouble kind of breaking things into shapes, then by all means do that. Turn it upside down, flip it, make it vertical, make it horizontal, like flip it 90 degrees, whatever you need to do to just kind of get your mindset to be thinking within more of that line of thought. Yeah.
All right. And then what was a really helpful practice for you to get a grip on values?
That's a good question. Grisaille paintings. Actually, you know what? Let me tell you guys a bit of a story here, or it's gonna make it fast. When I first started learning how to oil paint, like I said, I was like in college, as a broke college student. I didn't have money to to buy paints. I didn't have money. I only had like one brush, and I didn't have money to buy paints. And that one brush, I just had like a large brush because I'm like, well, I want to cover more ground, so I just used that one brush. And for paints, I didn't have money to buy anything, so I only had enough money to buy one tube of paint. So I just bought like black, and I just did a bunch of open grisailles, right? Where I used the white of the canvas, and even though canvas, it wasn't like fancy canvas. I bought like the Mona Lisa speedball boards actually. Those are the super cheap ones, right? I don't even touch those anymore, but those are the super cheap ones, like for $1. And then like I just use those at the very beginning, and just wipe away at them for like the lights. But I noticed that just by me practicing in that way, it really helped me gain I guess a grasp on values. right? Just because, when you're working with black and white, you're not really worried about colors, right? You're just worried more so about drawings and values. That's pretty much the only thing that you're, thinking about. So that's kind of like what I did. And, every time, a painting sold, I would, take that money and I would like buy another tube. So I remember I sold a few of those open grisailles, and then I used that money to buy myself a tube of white finally. And then I did a bunch of closed grisailles, just black and white, you know. But I think in terms of value, it all comes down to drawing, right? So it's like if you find yourself struggling with values, I would put down the paintbrush for a second and just do a few values, like a few drawings where emphasis on blocking is the key, right? And of course, that's just like what I feel like would be best. You don't have to do that because there are people out there that I know who skipped drawing entirely and just started painting, and they're doing amazing work. Two of them, one of them being one of my mentors, Daniel Keys, another one being my really good friends, Jared Brady, right? And those two are something else because like they completely skipped drawing, and they're making phenomenal paintings. So yeah.
Right. And then in between brush strokes, especially when changing colors, are you just wiping your brush on the paper towel or are you cleaning it in between?
I'm just wiping. I try not to dip my brush too much into the Gamsol. I try to limit the, not nothing against Gamsol. It's a great solvent, but it's a solvent nonetheless. So solvents are known to, like not be too good for brushes if you constantly use them. So I try to like limit the times that I do use my solvents. So so I only try to wipe it away. Although I do know some people like for instance, like my mentor Daniel Keys, he completely cleans his brush after every stroke. I don't know where he gets the patience to do that because that requires a huge amount of patience and paper towels. So yeah.
He cleaning, you said he cleans it in between every stroke?
I don't know if he still does that, but at least when I was
Wow.
studying with him, that's what he did. And I was like, dude, I'm like, wait,
Like
that's
cleaned it completely like
yeah,
clean or
yeah.
with the oh wow, that's insane.
I'm like, I mean, I guess it makes sense because you have such clean colors, but still, like, wow, that's a lot of discipline that I do not possess.
That
So,
is. Another question. Do you have a specific shipping method with your commissions, such as allotted time to dry and ways you package a painting?
hmm yeah, for sure. Oh, getting into shipping commission questions now. Oh, that's dope. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I really like Gamvar. Gamvar's a, like a lifesaver, and usually my commissions roll really fast, right? Like clients wants it, ASAP. So it takes me maybe around like 2 or 3 days to finish a painting. And then afterwards, what I would do is, I would give them at least 2 to 3 days to dry, and then I will apply Gamvar on them. And keep in mind, this is Gamvar. This is not Damar varnish. If you want to apply Damar varnish, you got to give it that 6 month wait. I don't have 6 months, so neither does the client. So I use Gamvar, and I make sure to let them know, hey, this is very much a temporary varnish, and if you want to, get a more permanent varnish, then you wait 6 months. You can either ship it back to me. I'll help you put the varnish on it and strip the Gamvar off, or you can do it yourself if you're a painter. But that's usually like what I like doing. And as for shipping, I don't like shipping big paintings. I mean, I've never really shipped paintings that are super big because the big paintings I usually do that end up selling. People usually just come pick them up because they're also like iffy about shipping. So for me, like the biggest paintings that I've shipped so far were like I believe a 16 by 20, right? And for that, I had it in a frame too. So I just literally I ordered a frame. It gave and it just came in. The frame came in like a box that was fit for the frame. So I just put the painting in the frame. I just like wrapped it, in bubble wrap and all that packing paper and all that stuff. You want to make sure though, like especially if you just varnish, you don't want to like use bubble wrap on top. I believe I use, man, I forgot what the sheet is called. It looked a little like baking sheet in a way, but then you use that first. But you want to make sure that the painting is like dry, like completely dry from the varnish before you do any of that, right? Or else it's going to create indentations, and that's not good. Yeah.
All right, that's all we had right now for questions.
Right.
So if you want to just keep going, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. How are we doing on time? Are we
We're
done? Are we
at 4:01 right now.
4:01? Oh shoot. Okay. I mean, you guys want me to continue, or I mean, this hopefully
I
just
think
kind of gives you
I
guys
think you
a.
should keep going if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I could go a little bit longer. Let's see. I guess we can end it at maybe like in like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or so. But let's
That
end it at
we got people in the chat saying keep going, please.
keep going. All right. I'll go. You know what?
All right.
Yeah. If you guys just keep having questions, feel free to roll them in. I'll just keep going until everything is done, or everyone's satisfied with the answers that I'm giving.
Yeah, I
uh,
think that they're great. I think everyone's really enjoying this.
awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. So right now, I guess what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going in. And at this stage now, this is very much when it's just about kind of enjoying the process, right? And you know what? Before too many people leave, I guess, because I'm not going to work too much into this anyways, I guess I'll show you guys how I make like the little whisker effects. But before that, it's gonna, because I know a lot of people like ask me about that before too. Like, how do I make those? And it's like actually super simple, super easy. I actually got that trick from watching Jennifer Gennari because I was like, oh, that's so simple. Whoa. And honestly, it's just using the back end of your brush or a knife. So what I usually like doing is I like using a knife, whether it be a palette knife or anything like that. And oops. So right now, like, let's see, I'm gonna go in and boom, just kind of going in and getting some of like that nice lights like so. And this is kind of like how I get something like that, like that effect in. And then of course you can kind of go back in and adjust and paint it however you like. But yeah, hopefully this gives you guys a bit of an idea on how I do things. And now, of course, I'm going to go back in with a light blue. And actually, you know what? Sorry, not a light blue. Alizarin crimson. Sorry, I keep saying crimson. I recently switched over to permanent, so I'm still trying to get used to saying permanent. Switching to alizarin permanent. Getting some like this light.
Somebody wants to know if the whisker technique that you just showed, if that would work with acrylics as well.
Perhaps. I never worked with acrylic, so I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't. I maybe you can try it. Let me know. I can't guarantee anything because, like I said, I never worked with acrylic before, but it might work. It might
Yeah,
not.
I just know that they dry really fast, so that you would probably have to do that quickly into the acrylic.
Yeah,
and then
the thing.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying the thing about that is like you don't want to do the whisker trick too quick too because it's like you want to kind of have a bit of a value build up before you introduce something like that, right? So, anyways, yeah, go ahead. You were saying?
Another question. Where did it go? What's your thought process on the background color?
So the background is basically I try to like look at the subject or I try to look at a reference and I try to very much just let the values that I see in the background influence and inform me on what the background color should be, right? It's almost kind of like in life in a way where it's like if you're looking at something, if you're looking at someone and there's like a whole thing happening behind them, you're not necessarily focusing on like the thing that's behind them, but it's still informing the environment that they're in terms of values, right? So that's something that I want to think about, or I try to let myself think about, So for instance, like right over here, like in the value, or at least in the reference, I see, okay, well, that's like a white, but is it really a white? Like, if I were to compare it to the orange, then it's definitely like leaning more towards the yellow or even blue, right? So that's why I created a blue. I didn't want it to be so overly blown out too, because then it would take away from this. So that was why, I still retained the essence of that blue in there, but then like, I didn't like blow it out too much in terms of values. In terms of here too, like, they're around like a darker, Coco was like surrounded by like, like all these frames in the back, but these frames are like dark. So, to me, they're just like dark values, right? Like, I'm not going to spend my time painting like that little face that you see right there, or maybe even like that little, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's gonna, you don't want anything to take away from the focus or the focal subject point, right? But you still want it so that it's not just like a pure flat background, right? Because that's boring. So you want to place it within an environment, but you want that environment to inform it just enough so that you kind of understand exactly, that it is an environment, but you don't have to focus too much on that environment. That makes sense. Yeah.
What type of lighting do you use?
A good question. So the lighting, I just actually was in Utah, and Keith of Sentient Academy, he got me like these. He gave me these really nice lighting. This nice adjustable light that can go super light, and it can adjust its dial to like cool light and warm light. Shoot, I don't know the brand. It's too high up right now, so I actually can't see it. But it's one of those things where it closes and opens, like yeah. I think I'll let the people, I'll let Courtney and Alyssa know, and they'll like include that in the email that they send out later on.
Yeah, that's
I'll
what
let
I
you
was
guys
going
know.
to suggest, that we'll get that info from you and we will include it in the follow-up
Yeah,
email.
yeah. Sorry, I just got that light, so I actually am not sure.
So
Didn't.
speaking of Sentient Academy, you're going to be doing something with Keith for Vision X. Do you want to tell everybody about that?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, I am going to be presenting at Vision X as a faculty member this year. I had a blast last year, and this year I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about how I just kind of create these glow effects, right? I know I talked a little bit more about it today, but I'm really going to do a deep dive in, and we're going to be painting a pop culture character. I was getting some votes on what characters people wanted to see, and people were really vying for Star Wars or Marvel. So it's going to be either or, right? So and it's a really cool event. They got a lot of artists this year to attend and present, and it's literally at a fraction of the price of like most of the big conventions out there, just because it is online. But they made it so the fact that even though it's online, it's like super immersive, and like all the information being presented is still super good and super detailed. And you just they equip everyone with such good setups where it's going to be kind of like what I'm doing here, sometimes even better, right? And yeah, if anyone wants to join, it's or wants to attend, it's July 29th to 31st. I actually have a discount code as well. I gave it to the folks at Trickle that they'll be able to email you guys at later, but in case anyone wants to like write that down right now, it's just KQU22. That's my discount code. So feel free to, take advantage of that. That'll get you 30% off of your ticket purchase. So
and the other good thing about Vision X is if you buy the upgraded package, you can, go back and rewatch all of the artist demos. So you're not having to write everything down and memorize it. You can go back and watch it. And I think it's even for up to a year that you can go back and watch those. So we'll definitely include that information in the follow-up email as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like there's recordings, and it's not like in real life workshops where, only the lucky 2 or 3 people sitting right next to the artist gets like good views. Everyone can get a good view here, and internationally too. And you don't have to like buy hotel tickets or anything like that. And, and even like, when you're watching the demo, you don't have to look at it from a weird angle. You're seeing exactly what I'm seeing. You're seeing exactly how I'm interpreting things, right? So it's like it gives you a much more of a first person on hand experience of just the entire process, the building block of all this, But let's see.
All right, so we don't have any more questions at this time. So if you just
Okay.
want to go ahead and
Yeah,
we're at 4:11 right now. So whenever you're comfortable wrapping it up.
for sure. Yeah. I guess we could wrap it up like right now. I'm just gonna maybe put 3 more strokes here. I'm gonna put 1 stroke here, 2 stroke here, and a final stroke just to indicate that highlight. So I'm probably gonna do it boop, 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 over here. All right, cool. Awesome. So hopefully this gives you guys a bit of an idea on, I mean, even within an hour, hopefully you guys can see just how much you can really accomplish if, you were to just think about things in the shapes, right? Now, I'm hoping everyone's entry is going to be a lot more detailed, where at least a lot more polished than this. This is just to kind of give you guys a bit of an idea. But hopefully this helps inspire some people to start work. And yeah, and for anyone who is interested or who still has questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram. My DMs are always open for anyone. I really enjoy teaching, and I really enjoy just sharing information with you guys. So yeah, feel free to contact me. I'm really good at replying, so I'll reply to you immediately. If not in the next 10 minutes. But
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Kai, and thank you everybody who tuned in to watch the demo. We hope that you guys do participate in this year's pet portrait competition, as Kai will be judging every single entry that comes through. But if you have any questions, like Kai said, feel free to reach out to him or us, and we will get that follow-up email out to you within the next 24 hours, hopefully. So thanks again, Kai, and we will see everybody at the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.